Hello, this is day 16. I'm gonna talk about a few of the culture shocks that I've been experiencing since I've lived here, which I think is like interesting, right? So the first one, sun setting so early. 7 p.m. is when the sun sets. I feel like that's so early for the sun to set, right? In Canada, the sun sets 10 p.m. in the summertime, and in the winter it sets like at 5 or so, right? But that makes sense. It's like my body experienced that for my whole life, so I'm so used to the cycle of in the summertime it being like super long days and everything, and then the wintertime it being super short days, right? But here it's like the sun sets at 7 p.m. So I'm like, oh, it's like it must be like 11 p.m., right? Very first day I was here, I was like, oh, it must be like 11 p.m. No, it was like 7 p.m. and it was dark outside. And I was like, what? This is crazy. Like, I think that's like the biggest shock to me. I know it sounds like stupid, but it's like the biggest shock to me personally. Another one is people's walking habits. So I assumed that when I came to Japan, everybody would be walking on the one side of the street, and then the people that were coming the other way would be walking on the other side, right? No. It's like, it's everybody just kind of walks wherever they go, and like there's bikes too. Everybody's just walking and biking. There's no order to it at all, right? I feel like that's a common like misconception, is that people think that Japan is like very, very orderly, and they are, but not down to like every single thing, right? Like, example, walking habits. People are not walking in an orderly fashion, especially like, at least from what I've experienced, people aren't really doing that because like, what's the point, you know? Like, because I don't know, it's just walking on the sidewalk, right? But like, I feel like that's something that I heard, and I was like, oh my god, people are gonna be walking like this on the street, so I need to walk like this. No, like nobody cares. Like, I don't know. Stores, like most businesses and stores, don't open until like 10 or 11, which I think was something that's kind of like interesting to me. Like, for example, the first day that I was here, I was like, oh, I want to go get coffee, and it was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 a.m. I was like, oh, I want to get coffee, and I looked it up, and there was like no coffee places open until like 11. I'm like, oh, so I can't have coffee, right? And it's like, I feel like that's something that's kind of interesting, as well as the fact that that businesses open later, but they also stay open later too. Like, they don't close until a later time in the day, whereas in Canada, places open earlier, and then they usually close at like 5 or 6, right? So it's like they'll open at like 8 or 9 and close at 5 or 6, right? So it's like, it like makes sense, because it's like they open later and they stay open later. Anyways, the garbage situation. So everything, all the garbage has to be separated according to like the rules and like where you live or whatever. So where I live, I need to like separate like burnable garbage, which is just like your regular garbage, and then recyclables is like technically split into 3, I guess. So the 1 is just like your recyclable bottles, and then 2 is like the plastic containers. So for example, on the bottle there's like the label. You take the label off, and then that would go into the plastic container recycling. And then the other one would be like your cardboard. So like your cardboard, like the bigger cardboard boxes and everything, gets broken down, and that's separate. So there's 3 different recyclables. And then if you have like metals or whatever, that's separate from everything else. But I feel like that's something that's interesting. And like, there's certain days for garbage as well. Like there is in Canada too. Like, there's certain days for garbage or recycling, but it's different because it's like, you can't just go put your garbage or your recycling outside. You need to do it the day of, before a certain time, because then it's like, it can attract like birds or something, like kind of make a mess on the street, right? And then I noticed that there's also not a lot of bigger, flashier like signage and buildings everywhere, right? Like in the shopping districts there is, because it's meant to be that way. Like in shopping districts, it's meant to be loud and like flashy signs and everything. But like, just in general areas, it's not like that at all. Like, especially in Kyoto, I noticed that it's not really like that. For example, like if there's a restaurant on a street, it kind of blends in with everything else that's on the street. Like there's not gonna be a huge sign being like, oh yeah, this is this restaurant. Like no, it's not really like that. I feel like that's something that's really interesting, because in Canada every store has really has a sign. It doesn't have to always be flashy, but like you know that it's there, right? Like you know that there's like a restaurant or a store there because there's a big sign. But here it's not like that, which I feel like that also is like an interesting concept, just in the terms of how people think and everything. Like for example, in Canada, you go to like, let's say Walmart for example, you'll know that there's a Walmart there because there's like a big sign, and like there's signs leading up to where it is, kind of thing, right? But here it's like, I went to like a bigger department store to get some of my appliances for my apartment, and I didn't know that that building was there until I saw the sign on the building itself. Like there's not signage everywhere to be like, oh, this is like this place and like stuff like that. I feel like that is like a really interesting concept, and it probably affects like shopping habits as well, right? I'm not sure, but like it probably has to, right? But anyways, those are just like a few of the culture shocks that I've experienced so far. There are a few others, but I feel like it's not as shocking to live here as I thought it would be.